Hey, good afternoon, cousins. It's Robbin. We're back with another episode of the Sunday Dinner Podcast, where we talk about all the things we need to talk about, straight no chaser, but with love and compassion. Today, I am joined by a childhood friend, elementary school, I believe,
Mhm.
Leon Pryor, who is a tech guru, robotics team dad, community leader, all these wonderful, wonderful things. We want to get into a conversation today, family, about what we need to know um, about technology and where the world is going. Like it's here, but where it's going and how we cannot be left behind. I trust Leon's going to give us some really great information. He's going to inspire us because he's doing some amazing work in the city of Detroit. Cleveland, homeboy. I called you a homeboy. Isn't that funny?
You did. That's okay.
But it's like when you grow up with somebody, no matter how much time lapses in between, you feel like you still know them. I was there for your formative years, so we will always be bonded in that way, friend, like just like
Yeah,
cousins, right?
exactly.
So,
Exactly.
um, Leon, thank you so much for being here with us today. Start by telling the people a little bit about like what you do in your day job. I kind of want to start there.
Sure. So, my day job, I am a senior video game producer at Meta, which basically means I make online, virtual, augmented, and mixed reality games for our headset, the Meta Quest and the Meta Quest S, which actually just released a couple weeks ago. So, I work with partners all over the world, Sweden, California, Pittsburgh, to help bring the visions of those developers to our platforms.
Yes. That is so wonderful. I love it because we grew up in the same Lee Harvard community here in Cleveland. And so to know that you are doing something so important for the world, right? Because while it's gaming and it's video games and it's virtual reality, I know that those things can be transferred and used in other ways. And so I know the work is really important, right?
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, absolutely. I mean, I would just interject really quickly is that one, video games employ a lot of people. It's a big form of entertainment worldwide. But two, a lot of the technologies, particularly the technologies in computer graphics and 3D acceleration, are pushed forward by games. So if you have a Tesla, right, you'll see your car rendered in 3D, and you can rotate around your car and see things from any angle. That's all technology that was pioneered on PlayStation and early PC video games, which is relatively commonplace and hardware accelerated. So a lot of the technology increases that we've seen over the past couple decades have been very much, particularly in terms of performance, have been very much fueled by games the entire time.
yeah. So Leon, I have to tell our story. so so Leon and I went to elementary school together, and I think it was sixth grade, right? It was I think it was around
About
sixth grade. Yeah. The Commodore 64 computer came out, and my mom, working her two jobs, she saved up for it because she knew that this was the future, right? That her daughter needed this computer. So you would plug it into like a television, right? There weren't even screens that came with this thing. And it was cool, right? It was cool while it lasted. Got it for Christmas. By the time we went back to school in January, my Commodore 64 did not work. Get back to school after winter break, chopping it up with my good friend and table mate. Guess what? Guess what Leon also got for Christmas? A Commodore 64. One
yeah,
of
that
us works for Meta, one of us does not. Leon, tell us. And you're a parent, so you have a son, and he's really kind of following in your footsteps. He has the interest in the technology. But I want you to talk to our family about nurturing your kids' interests, one, but like in a global sense. But
yeah.
then why is it important if they have a spark and they're interested in technology? And if they don't, why it's equally important for the exposure?
I think it's necessary no matter what your child does. they have to embrace technology. No matter what industry you're in, you can't avoid it. You can't avoid computerization. If you are an auto mechanic, you're hooking up computers with the OBD2 port on that car to get diagnostic information. So you can't run from it, right? There are no Luddites in this world. So even if you're a musician, right? You know, when we were younger and you wanted to be a musician and you wanted to get a record deal, then you had to have a big deal with a producer and it cost you millions of dollars to get studio time, right? That's why TLC went bankrupt, right?
Right.
Because of things. Now I can take an iMac and GarageBand and record my entire deal in my house, right? All I need is a
Yes.
microphone, right? So technology has democratized that process. Anybody can do that, and I don't even need to reproduce records anymore. I can put that music on iTunes or streaming or Spotify. So everything has been technology is a great democratizer. So whatever your kids do, they have to be technology literate. They don't necessarily have to be a programmer. Now, for me, and I also see it with my son is I very much had kind of a creator's instinct with me, but I'm not musical. I can't dance. I can't play a musical instrument. I can't sing. I can't draw. I can't do any of these things. But I see code is the way that I create. The compiler is my canvas, right? Engineering things and giving machines life and the ability to see and interact with the world. That's how I express myself creatively. And you've got to look for that in kids because a lot of people don't understand that engineering is one of the most creative endeavors that there is on the planet. You are creating something from nothing. There's nothing, this problem hasn't been solved before. And you're coming up with novel solutions that often work at scale where they're used by millions. I've got games that I've written that were part of Microsoft Windows that were played by hundreds of millions of people all over the world. So it's important. A lot of times you see these things are linked. We actually have scientific evidence of this. The part of the brain that governs mathematics is also the part of the brain that governs the ability to read and cite sheet music. So you notice a lot of musicians are very good at
Mm,
math.
yeah.
So there are relationships. People, you think about the left and the right brain as the creative and the structured, and a lot of people think of those things as separate. They say, "Oh, I'm a left brain person," or "I'm a right brain person." But I'm sorry, you can't sit on your back painting the roof of the Sistine Chapel without process and organization and being.
Yes. So a lot of folks focus on reading, right? So I had a guest on here and she does a lot of tutoring and she was just telling us how like second and third graders that she works with can't spell their last name. They don't know the complete alphabet. I hear you calling out math as equally important, right? So how do we get our families to understand that both are important and maybe what they can do to ensure that their kids are able to engage in math, love it, like it, but understand the importance of knowing it.
Yeah, I think particularly for a lot of families that aren't from a particular educational background or they may not see the particular value, right? And I had the benefit that my mother was an elementary school teacher, my father was a high school principal, so it was like thou shalt learn was written on the DNA of everyone in the house. But I recognize that's not the case for everybody. We got a lot of families. They're working multiple jobs, and they're struggling to get by. But math in particular, STEM, or some people say STEAM. I like STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. Right at this point, like it's everything. It's foundational. Like you teach your kids not to touch the stove. You have to teach them how to understand, math and science and all these things. Right? It's going to come up. It's going to be important. Now, the good news is that at least in schools, we're seeing a lot of after school programs. We're seeing Girls of Code, we're seeing first robotics programs, we're seeing hackathons, right? There's more opportunity. The other thing is our children are now more connected than they've ever been, right? Like in their
Yes.
pocket, they have the sheer repository of all of the knowledge of man, right, in their pocket. But the trick is teaching them to do more than get on TikTok, right? And
Yes.
to use these resources, like I always get asked by kids, I want to make a video game. And I have this great passive aggressive answer where I just look at them and say, go make a video game. And then they look at me kind of puzzled. But the reason is that all the tools and knowledge to do this are on the internet, right? For free,
Ah,
for you to go get. What we're missing is that attitude and that cultural shift that they want to go get those things. So with the foundation that I started in Detroit for robotics called the Motor City Alliance, our kind of motto is changing the culture of STEM in Detroit,
love
because
it.
they have to see these things,
Love
right?
it.
Like if you pick basketball, a parent
Right.
without many resources will spend a ridiculous amount of money to send
Yes.
their kid to some Detroit Pistons basketball camp, whatever, when the chance of that child reaching the NBA are 0.004%, right?
Right.
They're going to fail, right? I can just say out of hand, unless they're 7 feet tall, that is the only statistical outlier that predicts success in professional sports, right?
You see
They're
how
going to
you just added that math in there? You see how
Yep,
you did
see,
that?
it's
See?
it's built in
Yes.
DNA, right?
Okay.
And but someone that's an engineer or a mathematician, right? There's a 100% chance that that person can achieve success if
Wow.
they move through things. So, what would you rather prepare your child for? The sure thing, or this outside thing, that likely won't happen? And that's where I get frustrated in our communities in particular, because we put such an emphasis on sports. And I played sports in high school, to be clear. And there was a lot from a formative, there's a lot of things that I benefited from being in sports and learning in those relationships. But at the same time, right, it's not a career, right? It's just,
Right.
and even if you say, there are always people that say, well, you can become a statistician or you can work on sports technologies. Well, those are STEM careers,
Them
right?
careers, right.
That's science being
It's not the
applied to
ball and the
sports.
bat or the
So
ball and the hoop, right?
right.
Yeah.
So it's like, thank you for proving my point, right? When I have that particular discussion.
Yeah. So talk a little bit more. You talked about your robotics organization. Tell us about that and like
Yeah.
why you did it.
So for me, my son was in a robotics program at school, in elementary school, and I went to their first competition, and I didn't really know what was going on. I just started working for Amazon, so I was really busy, and it was a complete and total disaster, right? Like complete 100% failure. My son is like embarrassed and crying, and I kind of said, "Hey, with my experience, if I don't get involved here, I'm a jerk." So on my way home, my son's like third grade, right? We're driving home, and he's crying through all of this, and I basically said, "Look, I'm going to get involved. I can't promise what we're going to win, but I promise you we will win something. I don't know, but we will win something." So
Okay.
the other side of that story, which I love to tell, is as we're on the plane headed for the World Championship of Robotics in Texas, I lean
Yes.
over and I go, "How'd I do on that promise?" And he's like, "Yeah, you did pretty good," right? So
Yes.
I was able to turn a last place Detroit robotics team into one of the best in the state. And in the state of Michigan, we have more robotics teams than football teams, right? So that's a pretty, serious designation that we had. But it wasn't good enough to me that I was just helping the dozen or so kids on my team. How can we make this scale, right? How can we help other kids in the community see this? So I worked with some other robotics teams in the area, and we founded a nonprofit called the Motor City Alliance with this mission of helping improve, kind of STEM and outcomes for our students in
Yeah.
Detroit through the mechanism of robotics. So we support about 100 teams from kindergarten to high school.
So you have kindergartners learning robotics?
First, not kindergarten, but first through
First
third,
grade.
absolutely. They do Lego robotics, and it kind of scales. They start at Lego, then they move to bigger Lego, Then they move to a robot that's about 18 inches. And then the final stage in high school, it's 3 to 4 feet tall, weighs 125 pounds, and moves at 25 to 30 feet per second. Right. So it's
Wow. And this is like all out of Legos. This is like no.
only up to the second level. Then they start building out of metal and middle school, and in high school we're fabricating everything. Like we're buying aluminum from Home Depot and cutting and shaping it.
Wow. You have to share some pictures and we'll try to get them in here so I can see
Absolutely.
your kids' robots. Leon, that is amazing because as we know, Elon Musk recently released his robot and I think everybody had a moment of like iRobot meets the Jetsons. It's really happening. And so somebody with your skills, your knowledge, your interests, tell us what we should be thinking about in terms of engaging with this technology. And
Yeah.
I'll say this, I try to focus our conversations here on the pod a lot around being less of a consumer and more of either a creator or somebody who is consuming with intention, right? So come on, it's here. The robots are here, the cars are here. What do we
So
need to be doing?
you're right, right? So we are in the cusp of mechanization revolution that we probably haven't seen on this level since computers hit the mainstream or when automobiles took over from horse-drawn carriages, right? And one of the examples a lot of people say, but they're going to take jobs, and my response is, have you seen anyone selling horse buggy whips on the corner anymore, right? No, you don't, right? Those jobs are
Right.
gone, right?
Right.
The automobile killed those jobs. And what did it do? It created jobs for mechanics. It created jobs for building cars, right? As the typewriter was replaced, right? It created, jobs for Microsoft Word
Right.
and Word Perfect and those technologies. So we are on that cusp again, right? And for a lot of these things, it's a good deal, right? Like as an example, I don't want anyone going into coal mines, right, looking for things or into dangerous collapses and things like that. Let's send robots to do that stuff, or to climb windmills, right? Let's fly a drone up.
Yeah.
In terms of artificial intelligence, AI is better at detecting breast cancer than the most experienced oncologist on the planet, right?
So
So
listen, so I'm glad you said about AI because
mhm.
you know, people think AI is just kids getting out of doing homework, like, using it for that. But you're saying AI is much more than that.
It's absolutely right. We're again, like, you think medical diagnosis. I love bringing up the breast cancer example because it can detect things a lot earlier than humans can. Right? You always talk about a surgeon with steady hands. Who cares when a robot can be steady 100% of the time? Right? Now you can have that same physician can be directing the robot or directing the technology, and the implementation can be cleaner. We're eventually going to get to the point where all cars on the road are AI or autonomous driven. And what's going to happen is that car accidents are going to go to zero, right? You're not going to have any car
Really?
accidents. Yeah,
You really believe that?
absolutely. Absolutely. Right. Distracted drivers, people
Yes.
speeding, people
Yes.
not paying attention.
Yes.
You went to school outside of Detroit. People love to run stop signs all the time. Right.
Yes.
All of that unpredictability in the system will be taken out. And then what's going to happen is we're going to have some really crazy second order problems. Right.
Okay.
Where do we get our organ donations from? Car accidents. So if car accidents
Oh
go
my
to
gosh.
zero,
Wait a minute. Pause. Pause. This is
yeah.
getting okay.
So,
Now you're taking us far. Okay, hold on. You're taking us too fast.
but think about it
Okay.
though, right? The opportunity there, then I look at the geneticists, right? Okay, geneticists, can you guys come up with ways to clone individual organs, right? Then what's that going to mean for disease or genetic diseases or things that we can create, right? There are second order things that are going to explode over the next 10 to 20 years that we can't even predict, right? You pull in this autonomous car string and the thread and winds on all these other things that go down the
Yes.
line. So I think putting kids in our people in a position to understand and push these technologies and not just consume them, right? To actually be creators, to tinker. The great thing about AI is that these AI models you can just create if you've got a web browser, right? Like you don't need there's very little barriers to entry to technology today except for a computer, and most people have some kind of computing device. Some are a few too many are based on phones
Right.
and not a PC, but even then you can get a Google tablet, or there's ways around that. So to me it's incredibly exciting. Like I don't look at the future as in fear, right? Like I definitely see there are going to be some disruptors. I would not become a truck driver anytime in the next 10 to 15 years because that job is gone, right? At least for long
Wait,
haul.
wait. So you said that job is going away.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
So, okay, pause again, because there are people who say, oh, we should be teaching kids how to be plumbers, carpenters, truck drivers, because college isn't for everyone, right?
Hmm.
And people, if you're following the show, you know I have my thoughts about college. I think it serves as more than just a pathway to a
Sure.
job. However, you need college or you don't need college for STEM, for what you're talking about,
I
because
don't
all
think you
this
need it.
open source.
I don't think you need it, right? I think it helps, right? I think I share many of your opinions of college in terms of, like, I personally call it life with training wheels. It's
Yes.
a chance for you to experience things where the stakes aren't dire if you make a mistake, and there's some safety nets to help you. I think that's beneficial, particularly as kids are kind of transitioning out of that high school period where they're shifting from being told what to do to making decisions on what they do in life.
Right.
But I do think that there are certain professions which are very repeatable, right? Like, so a driving, look, most of us drive, and it speaks to the amazing ability of our brains cognitively, but most of us drive unconsciously, right? When you first start driving, you're very focused on what
Yes.
you're doing. Now you just jump in your car and you have a conversation, and you can think about the grocery list and a million things. And if you think about how difficult of a problem that is, that your brain processes pretty much autonomously, it's absolutely amazing, right? But that's teachable to a machine, right? So
And this is
particularly
what we
long,
call machine learning.
absolutely, in
The
many ways,
repetitive nature of a machine doing something, it kind of learns.
right? We teach it, you're doing it right, and we reward it.
We're gonna have to
And
have a
then when
part
it
two
does
of
it
this
wrong,
conversation, because we have to know this stuff. We
absolutely,
have to get more in sync. I've had people on here talking about a number of things, like from health to being civically engaged. I think this is up there. If I have to make a top 5 list,
yeah.
like understanding more about technology other than being a consumer of it is like really critical for us.
Yeah, absolutely. And just being able to apply technology, it's in your daily life, it's a superpower. Look, yesterday I had a new kid who joined my robotics team. She was complaining that her headphones were broken, and one of the older kids said, let me see those headphones. He plopped them open, he grabbed the soldering iron, he found the broken connection, removed the broken connection, reestablished it, and had her headphones running again in 30 minutes. Right.
I love that. Look at what you're doing. You're out here teaching the children the technology way.
And he's 14. Right. So,
And this I want to be clear. This is in the city of Detroit.
yes. Yeah.
This is not Bloomfield Hills
This is
or
this
any
is
of the
in
other
the
more
city of
affluent
Detroit.
suburbs. This is the city of Detroit. So
Public
you
school.
are contributing to the cultivation of knowledge. You are creating places and spaces for the genius that is already within our kids to
Yeah.
grow.
I have a kid who is one of 12 children who had never been to a sit down restaurant, who had never left the city. And I'm telling you, this kid can use computer aided design tools to design a robot from scratch, use a CNC machine to fabricate that robot, and then build it all on his own, right? Without any help from me. He's going to be somebody's CTO someday. There's no question in my mind.
And I love this because the knowledge is their own, right? They're learning, but they have cultivated the engineer mindset. So he can go be somebody's CTO, or he can go create his own
Right.
venture, right?
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
so to me, all things being pointed to liberation, um, and getting that kid to and through college, or if there's another route, but then creating this option
Right.
to be a force in technology, which feels very scary. I'm Gen X, you're Gen X, but different paths. Technology is not scary to me. It's just that I know that at this point in my life, I don't know how much my brain could shift. Like, could I come build a robot? Maybe if I were in your after school program, maybe
Absolutely.
I could learn,
Yeah.
right? But I'm sleepy by 8 o'clock. So I don't know, right?
But
So
but
I don't
but
know. But I love what you're doing because it's creating an option for our kids that doesn't exist. So thank you. I want to say thank you. Thank you for leading. Thank you for sharing of yourself. You know, this is what it's going to take, because we keep looking for the they, but we are the they.
right.
And you certainly are the they in this technology space. That's why I was like, I gotta have you on, because you gotta tell us what to do. You gotta tell us how to get the kids activated in the space, and
Remember
make it a
remember
little
the
less scary.
Remember that the first Spider-Man like live action movie, maybe about 10, 15 years ago,
Yeah.
there was a song with it in that and called Hero, and it stuck to me, right? Because the tagline was, they say a hero will save us, but I'm not gonna stand here and wait. Right.
Wow.
And that has
Love it.
resonated with me over a decade, right? Like, if you
Yes.
see a problem, go fix it, right?
I'm
I'm
not
not
gonna
waiting
stand here and wait. I love
I'm
that.
not going to wait for somebody else to solve the problem when I can solve it. When I have the power and the abilities and the responsibility to solve it. I have stood on the shoulders of giants to get where I am, right? In terms of education and civil rights, and like, my God, my father was one of the people that desegregated Cleveland public schools, right?
Yes.
And so I wouldn't be here if those people hadn't sacrificed for me. The only way I repay that debt is to pay it forward. And that's what I choose to do.
Yes. Somebody recently shared something with me, and it goes, those who know are responsible, or the responsibility lies with those who know.
Yeah. Mhm.
So it's answering that call, right? And sometimes we say, to whom much is given, much is required. And it's like, it's a saying, it's this ethereal thing, but you're like kind of like living what that means, right?
Yeah, I mean, I try. I think what people get caught up in is they try to define their service in how someone else is doing things, right? And they might say, "Well,
Mm,
I don't want to be a politician. I don't want to run for office." Well, don't, right? You shouldn't do the things that you don't have an expertise on, right? Like,
that's right.
find a way to link your passion, because if you're passionate about it, it'll show through. It'll come across as authentic for the kids, and they'll soak it up. Or it doesn't have to be kids, it can be adults, whatever, right? But
Yeah.
whatever that thing is, find a way to incorporate that, because a lot of times, like, what is our I am fortunate in that my passion, what I love to do, I've always loved playing video games, and I found a way to make that how I eat. But a lot of people, their 9 to 5 isn't necessarily what they're super passionate about, right?
Yep.
So this is a way to link that, right? Like, okay, we'll spend some time with some kids after school, or it doesn't have to be kids, it can be young adults, it can be whatever.
Right.
Find the group, and if it is what you love to do, it will be natural, and you'll want to do it, and you'll enjoy it.
Leon, I love what you're saying, because it makes me think about something that I also like want our family to know. And I've said this a couple of times. It's like, you gotta look in the mirror and be 100% honest with yourself. It
Yes.
really doesn't matter what you tell other people. We talk about wearing masks, we talk about showing up and, performing, so to speak, for jobs and family and friends. But when you look in that mirror, you've got to say, I really care about, I'm really curious about, I get joy when. And
Right.
like, let yourself have that moment of truth, because I promise it will change your life. It will
Absolutely.
make you find a way to be in that space,
Yeah.
right?
100%. And that's hard to do, right?
It's
And
hard to do, but it's what we've got to do. Because there are a
mhm,
lot of miserable people out here.
Yeah.
who are not thriving in any way, shape, or form because they're holding on to this expectation that's unrealistic and they're not willing to give themselves the gift of the this is gonna sound crazy, but the pursuit of happiness, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yes. That's
recently I
self-determination.
heard this podcaster talking about happiness versus pleasure and how we don't pursue happiness, we pursue pleasure. It's like the instant gratification of it. I want to feel good right now. Whereas happiness is the longer play.
Yeah. I mean, I had an epiphany. This was in my 20s. I was working at Microsoft, and I had a meeting with. We had to have a meeting with a VP before things got out of the way. But that VP was out of the office for 3 weeks in June on vacation, right? And I was like fretting. I was like, I need to get this done. He's not here. It's a problem. But then I just kind of put it on hold and said, wait a minute. He's enjoying his life, right? He's in this vacation in France with his family, and I'm sitting here like it's not my fault that he's not available, and I'm putting all this pressure on myself, and it's just like, you know what, I'm going to go on my vacation, right, and I'm going to enjoy myself and do the things that I want to do, and I think that's also the secret to long lifespans, right? You look at the people that live long, that are living into their hundreds, right, and they absolutely make that case. So I completely agree. It's hard. Many of us lie to ourselves professionally, and it's not fair because we're our own worst enemy. We know all our weak points, and it's really easy. It's really easy to do that. But yeah, I think it's absolutely critical that you are honest, and sometimes it takes a lot of courage to basically change your career or go pursue that thing that you want to do. But at the end of the day, right, do you want to be buried knowing like he suffered, right? Like that's not how I want to be remembered, right? I want to be remembered as somebody that followed his passions and tried to open doors for others, right? Like to me that means way more than anything else.
Yeah, and it's like we've got to ask ourselves, what is it costing? If this is costing too much, we got to let it go. Or, like you said, we're not going to have longevity,
Yeah.
right? We're just not. I mean, we see it every day. When I used to work at the when I used to work for the Board of Education, folks would
Mhm.
retire in June. First of all, they wouldn't retire when they immediately could.
Right.
They'd be like, "Oh, I got to work 2 more years. I got to work another year." They would retire in June, and I promise you, by January, we were going to people's funerals.
Yeah.
And I just think there is a different way. It's like, what are we chasing?
There's it's a sci-fi quote, but I'm nerdy. You know that you were there since the beginning of my nerddom, so that's fine. But there was a quote in the movie, and the quote was, "Time is the fire in which we all burn,"
Oh,
and
wow.
that's another thing that just kind of has stuck with me because it's just like you can spend your time however you want, but you can't get any of it back.
Can't
And
get it back.
so use those seconds, use those minutes, use those hours wisely, and think about I can't get this time back, so is this thing I'm doing, is it worth it? And sometimes, look, we all have to pay the bills and do things that are necessary, of course, right? but,
Absolutely.
but at the same time, right, like really focusing on making sure that you're living well, because no one else is going to live your life for you. No one else is going to
That's
tell you how to live
right.
your life, right? It's on you. Mhm.
It is on you. And I think when you are well and when you are thriving, because look, you have the bandwidth, you have the capacity to take on 1,000 kids across the city of Detroit and help them learn robotics because you made a conscious choice to say, hey, I'm not going to put myself in a situation where I'm miserable. Because when we're miserable, we can't help anybody. And and our families, our friends, our cousins, our communities, they need us, right? They need people who are willing to be responsible.
Right. Mm.
So
Right.
we've got to do the work of unlearning, healing, whatever it is, so that we can be okay because there's so much work to do in the community.
And you never know what small gesture you make might stick with somebody for the rest of their life. And I had with the kids I coach, I was in we have kind of a lab with multiple rooms, and I was in the room doing something, and I wasn't with the critical mass of the kids. And one of the new students asked, well, what if the coach doesn't make it? What if he's not there? And the young man I was telling you, who's one of 12 kids, basically said, coach will never let us down, right? Like,
Wow.
and that was like, oh, I'm all right, I'm all right. You know what I mean? I had that onion
Yes,
cutting moment, but the fact that they internalize that I never stopped fighting for them, right, and that they recognize that, and frankly, in these communities, having this role as a black man, and having them see that, and having them see somebody that's
that
working for
part.
Meta, and somebody that's making the video games or has made the video games that they've played, that's important, because they may not see those, and then they can look at that and go, oh, I can do all those things. It's just like, yeah, you can. That's kind of a point. I want to make sure you understand that.
So do the kids get to play video games and have fun, or is it all
Oh
work?
yeah, yeah. We
You
always
think the robots are fun? Like, is it fun for them?
it's a blast. They absolutely love it. We always say it's the hardest fun you'll ever have.
The
Um,
hardest fun you'll ever have.
and
I love that.
when we go to competitions, but no, I mean, there are days that I'll bring video game systems in, and we'll put the robot down, and they'll play Mortal Kombat, or whatever, for a few hours. And we always do that. We always try to encourage. And the other thing is that I do with them, and this is part of the Motor City Alliance, is that when we're in the off season, technically my high school team's in the off season, we go help the middle school and the elementary kids, right? So we're
Oh,
teaching them from this point to already give back. And even the ones that have gone
love
on to
it.
college, they come back and help the high school team. So, I have uh, this kind of poster, small poster in my house, which says, at one point, a man has to realize that his son will follow his example and not his advice. And I read that every day. Every day I'm in town and I'm in my house, I read that, and just kind of reminded. And I see my son giving back. I see my son going to elementary schools and helping people, and that's carrying the culture that we need forward, right? Even for Gen Alpha and Gen Z.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that quote. Um, because there's so much negative publicity just about us as black people, right? Whether it's black women, black men, black families. So I love being able to have conversations with men like you, your father, but you're also this leader in the community, and to point out that your son is looking at you, but then also these kids that you're working with, that you're investing in, they also know that they can count on you. So talk about, like, do you feel pressure if you're talking to the cousins and,
Yeah.
we're of a certain age, maybe a generation or two younger than us, you know, a lot of folks are choosing not to have families, not to have kids, but a lot of folks are. Um and we got to stick in there, right? As a black man, a husband, a father, what is it like to stick in there, and what's the pressure? What's the reward?
Yeah, I think the pressure is definitely there. The reward is, like I said, when I see these kids applying engineering principles to their daily life and fixing their friends' headphones, right? There's pressure. There's only pressure in that there's only so much that I can personally affect. Right.
Mm,
So, there are going to be factors, beyond my comprehension. And honestly, sometimes there are factors which stretch my normal role, which I do anyway. Like, I found kids that, like, I had a couple kids that didn't have money for the SATs, and it was like, well, how much is it? And they're like, $35. I'm like, why are we having this conversation, right? And like, I paid for that, right? There are limits. Obviously I could pay someone's college tuition. That's too much, right? But there's pressure to make sure that I can fix, or I don't even say fix, but mold every part of their life. And I can't, right? I have a role to play, and I work really hard to play that role. And I know there's impact there. But I have to realize there's other parts of the village that also have to kick in. But one of the biggest things that I can do there is knowledge, right? So, as an example, in Detroit, we have something called Detroit Promise. Detroit Promise states that if you have over a 3.0 GPA, there are 18 colleges and universities in the state that you can go to for $0. One of which is the University of Michigan, right? Top
Yes.
school in the world you can go to for free if you have a GPA. So I make that known to these kids, right? That your grades, right? Like, look, college is expensive. Student loans are awful, and I have massive issues with how student loans are structured. But if you can go for $0, right, that changes things. So
Yeah.
so I want to make sure that knowledge is there, right? And then the other thing that I've really noticed that works, again, I talk about the culture change within our team. I had kids talking, and I had one kid saying, "Well, all my friends, they're C students. They don't understand, why I'm working hard." And my kid said, "You need better friends, right? You need to surround yourself with people who will hold you accountable to a B, and why you didn't get an A." And I think that was a lot of wisdom for some teenagers that a lot of grown adults.
Yeah. Or become the friend that they need, right?
Right,
So if
right.
we think about taking care
Mhm.
of each other, it's like if your friends are saying that to you, you're helping them to build that resilience to say, "No, you should be more like me. I'm not
Yes,
going to come down to a C. You should come up to an A or a B
absolutely.
and work harder."
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's something that kind of growing up as somebody that was very nerdy in school, that was something that I faced, kind of very early in life. Now, I of course had a family where it was unacceptable to come home with bad grades, so I had that pressure there. But again, a lot of people don't. When you've got parents who are working double shifts and who are just kind of struggling to get by, they may not be able to do that. So anything that you can do culturally to change that, right, and to
Yeah.
get the village to pick up that slack, will benefit everyone. But I mean, you can't save everybody, you can't do everything, and that can be frustrating at times. And you have to be okay with that. You have to be okay with the effect that you're having, and see the good, and not worry about, okay, I didn't solve every single problem. But being a person that's competitive, being a person that likes to fix all the problems, that can be
Yeah.
tough. Mhm,
Yeah.
mhm.
But you're giving the kids such a great opportunity, right? To be a part of something because we know that belonging is really important for kids. And I know this was some years back. I had a colleague that was like, "Oh, you went to boarding school. What was that like? What was what was the biggest thing that, you took away from having that experience?" And I thought about it, and one of the things was it normalized being smart, like, was okay. Like, so you
Yeah,
and I, we had
same
through 8th
experience.
grade, same schools,
Mhm.
and we had our little cliques of, like, the nerdy smart kids who wanted to get good grades, and then we had friends around us who were like, "Oh, you're such a nerd, you're this, you're that, you talk white," all of the things, right? But when I got into that environment, because there was that expectation of excellence, of doing your best, then I was like, okay, everybody is moving in this direction. So I love that you are setting that expectation for excellence, being part of a team that requires you to use your brain.
We have to normalize that outside of private schools and communities. And I had the same experience, right? Like, I went from being teased for being smart, for kids jumping me, on the way home, because I was carrying my books and things like that. So I go to a private school in Cleveland, and I'm admired for being smart, right? And like, really, like, am I not, like, why aren't my own people, my own community admiring for being smart? Am I not the hope and the dream of the slave, as the poem goes? So that's where our culture has failed, right? And that's where we have to change it. And so, yeah, being able to see that with these kids, and to see them starting to have conversations of, that's a world class team. How can we take them out? Right.
Yes, I
Right. We're
love
not
that.
afraid. We can do it. Right. We have the ability to do it. And my take there is, like, if you guys want it, then I have your back. Then I will do whatever I can to enable that.
Yes, I love that. So, are you getting a Tesla robot? I mean, is there going to be one in the prior household?
Not initially, but I think it's really interesting, between the Tesla robot, and there's also some really cool research being done by Toyota Research Institute, TRI, where they actually they're not humanoid, but they have tracked robots that sit on the ceiling. So you think in an assisted living scenario, this robot might do the dishes or prepare food, and then kind of go back in its cubby. So you think, what does it cost for at-home care for nursing homes and things like that? Well, what if you're at a point where you just need a little bit of help, right? And this robot can help with those tasks. Could I live a better life? Could that person stay in their home as opposed to moving to a nursing home? And what does that mean in terms of cost to the family? So again, like, my positive spin on technology moving forward, I see some really cool applications. I think are really exciting. There's a whole field called collaborative robotics. In fact, there's a company in California. It's one of the sponsors of our team. It's led by Brad Porter, the former VP of robotics at Amazon, that is working on this. Right? How can you make robots and humans interact in a way that is safe, given that we are
Yes.
extremely unpredictable?
Because I think that's what people are worried about. They're worried about iRobot. They're worried about the robot, having a short circuit and,
well,
not being safe.
iRobot's a perfect case of that. There's a scene in the movie where Will Smith overrides the car's automatic driving function, and he's driving manually, and he like is causing the chaos, right? Like the roads were perfectly oriented, the cars are driving automatically, and then people are like, "Oh my God, you're driving manually!" Like they were freaking out. He actually introduced that. So
Back
yeah,
to your point earlier about accidents going to zero and there being no
exactly.
organ donors. Oh my gosh. Okay. Do you drive like a I don't know what you call it, an electric vehicle?
I do. I have a Tesla.
How did I know?
It's a gadget.
And you can play video games in your
Yep.
Tesla, right?
My kids love
Not only
that.
is it built on the technology, it actually has the technology within. I
Yeah.
have a friend that has one, and he's like, "Oh, this car is so great." He's always like, "Oh, it's so great." He was like, "They gave me an opportunity to try out the feature where you can call the car to you."
Summon. Yeah.
What is it called?
It's called automatic summon, I think.
Yes. So yeah, you summon your Tesla.
I don't. I am very careful about these autonomous systems in cars, right? So I actually worked on the DARPA program to create autonomous Humvees, military trucks, about 10 years ago, and there are 5 levels of what we call autopilot. Um,
Okay.
with 4 and 5 being it's relatively safe. Tesla's at 2. Okay, so
Wow.
it's
So they're really pushing the envelope. They're doing some stuff that's like,
I would not use that technology. I don't think it is resilient enough, particularly driving in Detroit where people are, kind of random on doing things like stopping at stoplights and stop signs. I don't think it's resilient enough for it yet. And I personally would never entrust me or my family's life to level 2 autopilot. It will get there. It'll get there in the next 10 years. And I think Tesla's pushing things. One of the things that they're doing is that all of their cars are instrumented. So they're gathering data from everyone's driving habits, which is now feeding into these machine learning models, which is making them smarter. So I think we'll get to level 3, level 4 autonomous driving, like I said, within the decade. But yeah, personally, having worked in this technology, yeah, I'm not trusting it yet. And I like driving my car. It's fun to drive.
so you are very cautious about this level of security of au- autonomous movement or whatever of these
Yeah.
vehicles.
I mean, I think, the technology works in what we like to say in engineering is the happy path, right? When everything is great and wonderful, it works great. But driving, particularly around other humans, is about being able to compensate for the unexpected, right? So we talk about like defensive driving and things like that, where you're monitoring everything else that's going on. And I don't think those systems are far enough along yet to be able to deal with that. And then there's some interesting, ethical things that we have to solve as well, right? So there's a concept called the trolley problem, whereas that you're controlling a trolley that's out of control, and you can make it go down the left track or the right track. Well, the left track is going to hit a senior citizen, and the right track is
Ah,
going to hit a bunch of school children. So which one do you do?
oh my
uh,
gosh.
and that has to be programmed into your car, right? Because if the car is in a situation where it's out of control and it can either hit the senior citizen or hit the school bus or drive off the cliff and kill you, which does the car pick? Now, as the owner of the car, I wanted to preserve my life, but how do you have it make that ethical decision? And there's some really interesting questions which we have not decided on those answers yet. But as a human, you would make a judgment, right? I'm not going to hit. Most people say I'm not going to hit the school bus, right? In that case, so we got a little ways to go, but within the decade, I think we'll be there.
Okay. In the decade. All right, Leon, what else do we need to know about this technology that's coming at us hard and fast? You said don't be afraid, but you know.
I one of the ways that I liken it, I tell kids, I always ask them, who owns your education and who owns the decisions that you make
Mm,
for your education? And most make the mistake and they say the school, right? Because there's a curriculum that they have to follow. But in reality, yes, you have those requirements in that curriculum, but you decide that, right? If you want to go learn how to knit, pick up a book on knitting or go to YouTube and learn that. And once you're out of school, you still own those educational choices. So we still continue to grow. We learn things. Most of us aren't doing exactly what we went to college for. We're doing something related. I have a degree
right.
in electrical engineering. I've done nothing but software in terms of my career. I've done business development. I don't have an MBA. I taught myself these things. So we as creatures are constantly evolving. We as creatures are constantly changing. And when you stop changing, you're dead, right? So it doesn't matter what age you are. You're never too young. You're never too old or inflexible to learn, right? Our brains are extremely elastic in that regard, and we have an amazing ability to make connections between things that we've learned before and processing and help us learn new things. So I would say, with technology, look, my mom just turned 90, and she will pull out her iPad and FaceTime you in a
Oh,
minute. Uh,
I
and
love it.
she's not afraid of that technology, whereas I've seen other people that are 20 years younger than her. Oh, I can't do that. And it's like, no, you can't, right? You're choosing not to. So
Yes.
I think there's a cultural shift of, our parents and grandparents were raised in a way that you did things a certain way and you had to be taught. Whereas really
Right.
nowadays it's like, just experiment, right? You're not going to destroy the universe, right? Like, just go try new things and learn. And there's a whole field which, it's how I learn, called GEL, which is guided experiential learning. I can't read a book and learn something. I need to have that book open and apply it as I go along, right? It has
Yes.
to be an application. And that's just how I learn. And pedagogically, where even schools are starting to learn this. So Hawken in Cleveland, Ohio, started a set of schools called the Mastery School, which is
Right.
designed less about transcripts and more around
Right.
making sure people has these experiences and grading them on that experience, and not this factory worker pedagogy that kind of standard schools have been structured on for decades.
So is there a STEM slash robotic technology school maybe in your future?
One of the things we'd like to do is have like STEM centers throughout Detroit. Transportation is an issue here, so I'd love to have them kind of like the four corners of Detroit, where people come in and we have computers and we have CNC machines. You see this in a lot of places. They often call them maker spaces. But maybe having some additional kind of educational foundation around that, so that people can understand that these technologies are here, and they're here for you, and the knowledge is out there for free.
Yeah. One last question. So we have a lot of our family who maybe have kids or they themselves have learning differences. What would you
Mhm.
say to like parents and families who are like, "Hey, it would be great if my kid could, but because of their learning difference, and I'm making a very generalized bucket of learning differences, they're apprehensive or they don't want to put their kid in that situation. How do we encourage them to engage in technology, and maybe what does that look like?
One thing I would encourage is look up first robotics in your area. And one of the things, unfortunately, the movie went away because Disney's being Disney. But there was a movie on Disney called More Than Robots, and it was
Oh,
about this robotics program. And I hope somebody picks it up on streaming. But it was absolutely fantastic, and it followed a number of families and communities that engaged in this. And in California, there was a kid who was autistic. And he found, he didn't fit in school, he didn't fit in kind of the standard activities, but he found in robotics there was amazing patience for him, and that he was
oh,
able to shine in the things that he was good at, and you could just see joy, right, that he truly loved this, and it became this huge part of his life. And I find that in our STEM communities in particular, we're a little more accepting of the weird. Right, we're a little more accepting of the person that's not, that's a little off. And I tell this to my kids all the time, right? Like, it's just like this, if you feel like you're so socially awkward, you are home. And I often share, my experiences. A lot of times they don't believe me. I said, look, just because I've learned to communicate effectively doesn't mean that I wasn't in that place that you are now. And I try to really encourage that. So I would say to those parents, like, if you can find First is one of the largest organizations in the world. Go to firstinspires.org. If people in Michigan, reach out to me. We'll help you find that team in that community. And I think you'll find that it's very welcoming in the STEM field.
yes. Awesome. This has been so great, friend. I appreciate you kind of getting us what we need to know about technology and whatnot. But before I let you go, Sunday dinner, we got to talk about Sunday dinner, the actual meal. So,
Okay.
on your Sunday dinner plate, what are the three things you have to have?
Interesting. I would say on Sunday dinner, I'd like to have red meat. Is a good meal for Sunday dinner. So wood fired steak is a common choice. Garlic mashed potato and usually something green, maybe some steamed broccoli with butter and salt and pepper.
All right. We got a steak and potatoes kind of
Mhm.
Sunday dinner. I appreciate you.
Absolutely. Thank you
Hopefully,
thank you
we'll
for
do
having
this again.
me. Anytime.
All right.
Mhm.
Go First Robotics in Detroit and all around the country. Thanks so much for the work you do for our kids to like just keep that pathway open to the future. And we know that the future is technology. So thanks so much. All right, family. Another episode of Sunday Dinner. We're out. Peace. Thanks, Leon.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome.